We're gonna call this meeting to order. I was waiting on a couple of the oh my gosh, committee members. I was on the way and I heard from the other ones, so we called this meeting to order. Go ahead, Ms. Tiffany. Approval of the minutes from May 7th. Yeah, we did a May 7th meeting. There's nobody here. Um, New business resolution to amend the pilot ordinance for Project T. Did you want to do that first part and then go over? You want to do this first or you do the budget first? Okay.
We discussed the pilot ordinance last night, I believe. Okay, can you hear me now? Good. This resolution to amend the pilot ordinance for Project T. Okay. Okay, this pilot ordinance, as you may recall, there was originally a pilot approved for Project T at the very beginning when it was, in fact, considerably different than what it is now. Since that time, there has been enacted into law the tax increment finance for housing that is now applicable to this project. And part of it now is an amended pilot ordinance. They also amended the statutes regarding a pilot. And essentially, what this does is, under the act as it was amended, the properties are considered exempt from taxation and a payment in lieu of taxes based on 10% of the gross rents for the lower income or income qualified residents would be applicable to the project. Any purchasers of the homes who are not considered qualified, they would have to compute the full amount that would be applicable if it were taxable, and they would pay that. So essentially, that's what this is doing, is amending the previous pilot to comply with the current law and the changes that we've made in terms of the uh, program to enable it to coordinate along with the brownfield tax increment finance that's going on in the project.
I have a question. So are they still doing, they're doing multiple layers of the pilots? Or they got the 10%, so are they doing a 30%, 40%, 60%, or is it
No, it's just
just the
one
one?
pilot.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's based on the gross rents from income qualified people. Yeah.
For, just for reference, payments in lieu of taxes is what pilot stands for.
That's correct. And they would pay those by the resolution, they would pay them in July.
Does anybody have any questions in regards to this?
I believe it expires December 31st, 2066.
66.
December 31st, 2066 is the expiration uh, for the pilot.
So it's like 40 years. let me just bring it back to our memory when Habitat first came to the city hall with this project. It was all taken care of. We got all the money we need, we got everything we need, and here it is, over 2 years later, they want a pilot for how many years? I'm disappointed. I fought real hard to get the home ownership in it. And that was at that time, it was included 19 duplexes with market value and market value, whatever that is, where you have a certain income. Now it's all market value. They left out the 49 people percent that's poor in Benton Harbor. They left out the single person. I'm just having a hard time with this because it was such a done deal when they came, and it turned into be a fiasco. We still now we're gonna have two phases, and we don't have enough, to my appreciation, enough homeowners, and especially no low income. Ben Arbor has been classified as very low income since I was a little girl, and it hasn't gotten any better. It only just got worse and worse. And if we don't do something to help, that's not government for the people, of the people, and by the people. That's government for government. So I'm just so disappointed in this project, and I know it could be a great project for Benton Harbor, but every time I hear city manager and Miss Hildebrand come in and say, "We don't have any money. We low cash flow. We got to get money from this place and that place." It's okay as long as we ain't getting no loans, but we need money, and we just cannot keep giving our tax money away. We got more than four projects right here in downtown Benton Harbor that's on a pilot. And it is not enough because we keep crying broke. So if you think you're gonna keep doing the same thing over and over and get the same results, you're right. It's not working for us. We gotta do something different.
So,
Go ahead, Ms. Santana.
so I just was going to add a couple of comments that I thought of when Commissioner Henry was speaking. One of the things that, per my understanding, with this project, and Mr. Little can chime in, that they looked into low income, but it was rejected, so they went after the missing middle. And I thought that's what she said on Monday. So that allowed us to get something because the low income piece was rejected. And then regarding the piece of the financial impact. I don't know if, Mr. Little, if you have any data on the difference of what the property tax would be and a 10%. I say that because I've lived in a lot of other cities, and usually when you get a new construction, the city, especially in the inner city, because I've lived in the inner city in new construction, they would give me as a homeowner 10 years tax abatement. That means I didn't pay any tax.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, I
following
didn't
what
pay
you're saying. Yeah.
any taxes for, now it was only 10 years, but I brought it up to say it is normal to get some kind of incentive to build. So I don't know if Mr. Little has any data on what the 10% payment is versus what we would get, after. I don't know if you have any information on that.
I don't in terms of specifics right now, but you are right in terms of what you recall that was said Monday night, and that is, while technically The LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, did not apply here. Instead, you've got missing middle. But that does not mean that it isn't geared toward serving low income residents. As a matter of fact, when they say income qualified, they're talking about residents who would basically fit from, I believe it's 60 to 80, no, it's 40 to 80%, and then 80% to 120% of the median family income in your area. And that's what I was explaining when I said the 10% of gross revenues, that's applied only to those persons that fall in the category of 120% of median income and below. Those who are above the 120% of median income are considered not qualified, and they would have to pay the equivalent of what regular taxes would be.
All right. The other night you brought out a good point. That's why I didn't say nothing the other night, because you had got them to get to that ballpark figure where they was talking about 40,000. I've never been in disagreement with giving persons a break for so long. All right. And I say that because of this. The enterprise zone is up in Ben Harbor. I thought it was up this year for Whirlpool and various other corporations, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason I say that is because of this. When you bring in companies that are supposed to put into the general fund, this is just like when they gave Whirlpool, you know what Harbor Schultz pay? $30,000 a month for 99 years on that project out there, the beach project. That's what they pay. Because when they came with the original agreement, that was not an agreement, but they had agreed to it. And then when they came with what they voted on and they looked at it, was something totally different. And this project here, to go to 2066, that's just too much time to give people when it's going to be good money that the city could be generating off of taxes. 5-10 years is, that's enough time to get them up and going, where they can build, where they can get things off and running. But when you go to extending stuff for 40 years, how could you possibly expect to see any income coming to your general fund? This is when I was telling you, I've never been in disagreement with change, but when fair exchange has been a robbery, and in so many instances, they have been a robbery. That's just like with the Emma Hull project and a lot of these other projects where you might not be paying water, like with Harbor Shore. They don't even pay water bills. Come on, how can you not be paying water bills? You got to use that water. And see, stuff like that, when I talk about a solution, I would have to go back, being that this is a home rule community, and you would have to come up with your eminent domain process in order that you could renegotiate and put things in line. Because a lot of things is not generating finance to the general fund of the city. Just like this, the 2066, just think about it. That's 40 years. 40 years. You know what type of money going to be coming in after 10 years on this project? Because they have redesigned the city to where, if you look at who owns the property now, it's Europeans that own most of the property in the inner city.
Mr. Hayward.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Keep your
right.
questions germane to what we're talking about.
Okay, with this right here, that's what I'm saying. The reason I disagree with it is because I don't think it's in the best interest of the city. The only way I can see this being in the best interest of the city is with not to December 20, that's 40 years. 10 years is the minimum that they give anybody. Even on the enterprise zone, they didn't give them that much time. So to give them 40 years, I just can't see it. When they're bringing in homes that's going to be at 100,000 plus, because in order for people to stay there, you got to be two people with a nice income to even be in the lowest of low incomes, and that's what you brought out the other night.
If I could just clarify a couple of things. First, I wanted to, I omitted clarification on one part of what Commissioner Henry stated. This project, when you say there are no houses, this project consists of 14 duplexes, which is 28 homes that will be for sale. In addition to that, the 4-story building, of which the top 3 floors will be rentals and the bottom floor will be commercial and mixed use. Now, secondly, recognize that when you get the regular property tax levy, city does not get all of it. If you get $1 that's levied on property taxes, the largest piece of it goes to the school district. Some to the library, some to Takata, some to LMC, some to the county, and the city gets a portion. It's that portion that you compare in terms of what that percentage of gross revenues would be. When we did Enterprise Zone, I negotiated the details of Enterprise Zone back in the 80s when Governor, I can't think of his name right now, was in Lansing. What we did then was eliminated the income tax entirely for that period and substituted a 40% service fee. And that actually was more than what we would normally get from taxes by quite a bit more. That was the purpose of it in order to try and help the city. We had a provision in there where any houses constructed within the city during the enterprise zone, and let me emphasize, I'm talking about enterprise zone, which was different than later on a renaissance zone or whatever they called it that they put in. That was totally different. But the one that we did for constructing new housing in enterprise zone was a 100% exemption for 10 years. And I don't believe a single home got built under it. But nevertheless, I wanted to make those.
Hi, do I need to push this? Good evening. I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to understand. I know the duplexes are going to be for sale, and also the four-story building, and you're going to have, you say, 3 floors of apartments on the 3 floor. So, do you guys have an estimated amount of how many apartments you're going to have, and then also 39, and or do you have an estimated amount of what the actual rent's going to be? I know you mentioned 40 to 80% median income and the 80 to 120, and anything above the 120 would have to pay the taxes. Like, do you have an idea of what that's going to look like, or is that based upon the approval of the applicants? And also in regards to what Commissioner Santana said, like, I mean, is there any type of, like, understanding or potential understanding of what the 10% is going to be versus what the tax amount would be? Because we're talking about the master plan, we're talking about, I know during the master plan process, we were talking about building the 200 homes by 2040. I don't even know if that's still moving forward or not, but I know it was something that was talked about. And you guys were talking about the master plan in regards to bringing the 500 homes to bring the citizens and the working class citizens and the missing middle back to the city to start to generate more income. So with that being said, it was said that there were the homes that were going to be built were going to be built at $275 per square foot. So we're talking about $300,000 homes, which means that the property tax is going to be increased. So if you're talking about 40 years, a pilot for 40 years, we know that the property value is going to increase. If the city is going to be reconstructed and it's going to be new homes being built, we know that the property value and the property taxes are going to increase. So would it make sense to put a hold on taxes? I know right now, currently, we're saying that it may be even or not based upon how much the city gets from the property tax, from the taxes, property taxes paid, which they don't get all the property percentage. But we need to start looking ahead in the future in regards to what would that look like 10 years from now, when you guys said that you wanted to build 500 homes. Would it still make sense? And does it make sense to do this for 40 years? I'm not against anything, any progression, any new development, none of that. But at the end of the day, we have to start looking at things at a long-term aspect, more so than just for now. I just don't, 40 years to me I'm sure we probably won't even be around in 40 years. Like, I just think that the city is cheating themselves. I mean, the tax break that you're giving, 5, 10 years maybe, but 40 years, in my opinion, is just too long.
Unfortunately, as these projects are developing, they're using tools that are available to them under state law. We have the choice when they bring a project and are choosing to tie one of these tools to it. Our choice is either accept it or don't accept it. And unfortunately, for many communities, especially low-income communities like ours, it becomes a matter of do we want the development or not? And when we do that, we have to look at all of the factors involved in it. And that is, as you know, some discussions I've had with some of my elected officials, we will get new water customers, possibly additional population. We will get, hopefully, people who are working that will contribute to the income tax. So there is some benefit there. Likewise, just as was mentioned in terms of the exception there, we may get some where they're paying the full tax amount. But underneath that initial concept is the recoupment of the loan that's being financed with the increment that's put out. If, as you say, these values go up and that increment increases, and the amount that was loaned is recovered earlier, then the term doesn't necessarily go that long.
So
But it's set to go that distance in order to assure recoupment of what the financing is done on it.
Mr. Little, can you repeat that last part? Because I didn't know. I didn't understand what you just said.
In other words, if you put, as we had done under the Brownfield with that first plan that we approved, as I recall, it was financing $1 million for them over what was projected to be 28 years. And in essence, the amount it was going to take, that 28 years, to capture approximately 2.1 million, which would cover the interest as well as the principal to pay off that million. But if the value increased and the taxes increased, the more revenue that was generated, the shorter the period of time.
right.
That's basically how the tax increment financing works. They don't get to pay it off and then keep some after that. They don't get to do that. When they reach that amount, they're done. Yeah. Now, let's keep two things separate. When we're talking about the tax increment, which is separate from the pilot,
Right.
the pilot here would go for the full 40 years.
Thank you.
Remember when we started this project almost 4 years ago, and looking for a developer for it was one of the challenges. I remember we were doing the master planning, and we were talking to one of the gentlemen that had came in and had given us some information saying what would be great on that particular property, because he suggested some other things after going through the city and doing a tour of the city. We were missing that housing piece, but I just remember trying to find somebody to develop that property was difficult, and I think Renovari almost walked away from the project because of some of the costs associated with it, and so I can't remember exactly the other details without going into some of my notes, but I remember renegotiating with them to actually stay on this project or let it fall. And I don't think any of us wanted to see this project fail, not building housing in the city. It's just one of the reasons why we pressed forward with it.
Well, I just want to say, if we look at all the pilots that's been in the city, and they gave them 20 years. I know one was 25, and I can't remember the rest of them. But when those pilots left, how did the city fare when the projects were, when the money dried up, when the pilots dried up? Then what does the project look like? Then how much suffering do Benton Harbor residents do in these projects? You can look at the projects, they're here, and when their pilot runs dry, the owners run dry too, and the people run dry. So if city manager can put together a package, and he's so smart in negotiating, he needs to negotiate and get something better for the general fund. Because I guarantee you, if we keep going to the pots of money that we have available to us, in a while, that pot of money is gonna go away too. So let's,
Let me give you an example for what you're asking there. Take the Whirlpool North American Center down here. It's my understanding, and this was done during the period I was gone, but that there was a pilot on that facility. There was also tax increment financing on that facility. Not the same, but different taxing, because this is housing and that was industrial. Now, it's my understanding that the figure we were getting on that pilot, while far short of what if this was a fully taxable type facility would have been bringing in. But then if that was a requirement and that tool had not been there, probably the project wouldn't have been there. Now, that pilot ended, if I'm not mistaken, year before last or early last year. Now, then it began generating tax revenue. But that tax revenue did not come to the city because the tax increment financing that was done through the county brownfield authority. So now they're capturing the taxes to repay the brownfield loan that was made to help make that facility happen. But in terms of your question, what's left? A substantial portion of your income tax comes from the people that are working there. And if you don't believe me, if you look at what we had coming in as income tax during COVID, when they were allowing people to work at home, and so they didn't have to pay the income tax. And then when suddenly, in fact, I remember about, it's been several meetings ago when the Personnel and Finance Committee was when Ms. Galladay mentioned that the income had risen substantially. It rose because if you went down there and looked at that parking lot, it was no longer empty. Parking lot was full. Those people were back at work, and that boosted significantly Benton Harbor's income tax. So that's the measuring, the balancing act you have to look at every one of these projects. And believe me, I do. I have some of the same kind of concerns that you do on principle, but I also have the numbers to work with. And when I go through that and look at it, and this Project T became a tough one. I say became a tough one because it kept changing. And I didn't like that, but nevertheless, we saw it through. But on each one of these projects, and in fact, I had a developer come here Friday before last, that I've been talking to for 3 years. And in fact, when I first met him, he came here specifically interested in doing a low-income LIHTC project. And where he was looking at wouldn't work because at that time, Mister's measuring stick included what they call walkability. Is there a grocery store and a drugstore within a 1 mile walking distance? And of course, we didn't have that. So the project didn't go 3 years ago. Mister just made some changes in their regulations, and we got to talking again. He come here to sit down and where he's going back to do some things. I'm going to do some things, and we're going to start seeing if we can put something together. But ultimately, keep in mind, from the very beginning, when I stepped forward to take on the economic development responsibilities, and I explained then that the key to just what you're asking about, bringing the city back to health, has several parts to it. One of them is to increase the population. That census count each 10 years and what it shows as your population has everything to do with how you go financially through the period as far as federal monies and grants and that kind of thing. Population, housing, which was the key to bringing up your population, and also the key to building a workforce. Because if you've got workforce housing, one of the things that I noticed by the time my first year was up here is that this whole region has a problem, a serious deficiency in housing for working class people. And I think that was a result of the fact that you went through an extended period here where this community got advertised to the whole world as they were seeing Harbor Shores on television. People came in here who had never been here before. And when they saw how beautiful it is sitting on Lake Michigan and St. Joe River and the temperate climate and everything, people started buying houses in here. They bought everything. They even offered so much money to working class people's homes that they took it. But then after they sold their homes, there was no place for them to live. We suddenly had people driving from South Bend and Michigan City and Portage, Michigan, and so forth to come here to work. We started getting people coming to the city saying, "We need your help to get workers." And the only way we can do that is get homes for them to live in. So when you look at increasing your population, your housing, your tax base, all of that has to link together in order to get there. Otherwise, you keep doing what he was saying a moment ago. You're just spinning your wheels. You got to get all those pieces moving in order to make this happen. And keep in mind, it's the reverse of the same process that took us to where we are. When I was first came here back in the 80s, your population was almost 17,000, 16,700, I believe. Your housing units at that time was close to 5,000, and it kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And right now, you got about 4,300 units, of which about 700 are vacant, and half of those are at the stage they need to be torn down. But you've got to rebuild that. And we're using all the tools available. And like I said, part of it, we're working on a plan to put out an RFP for developers and at the same time, one for individuals that they could come in, work with us, and we'll assist them in terms of the land to build a home on, the financing for the home, and the whole works to try to start this engine building people coming back into this neighborhood and building houses. And our last comment, so I don't run on the time, we got a lot of people complaining about what's it, your favorite word? Uh, people, no, people coming in and the population
Carpetbagging?
being driven out and new.
Oh, gentrification?
Yes, yes,
Spell it.
I just
Spell it
want,
for everybody.
I just want to mention, has anybody noticed when you're riding around the streets of this city, all of the new residents that is showing up? You cannot notice it. They're all over the place.
Oh, go ahead.
So, Mr. Little, it seems like the biggest concern from everyone in the room is the 40 years. My question, and this might also help alleviate this in the commission meeting, regarding the 40-year period, is that something that is common amongst other cities? So, can you speak to that quickly?
Yes, it is, and it varies from one place to another, and depending on what's going on. Just as you heard, it was 30 years on, I believe, the Whirlpool building. Some places they're 30, sometimes they're 40. It depends on what's being financed and what that whole package. But I'll say this too, that the production from that 10% for that time period isn't stagnant. Rents go up and down, usually up, very seldom down. And as they go up, what the value of that percentage increases.
Is there a way for when this is passed on in the commission meeting? I don't know if this is possible, but I have to ask that you could bring like an example of what a 10% could look like, or is that difficult to do because you won't know the rents? I'm just asking.
Could you do like like an estimated, like what that might look like based on other things that have been done, comparables that have been done? Like,
Sense that, for example, if the rent is $900 a month, that 900 produces $90.
yeah, the 10%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you've got, for example, 39 units, just simplify it, say all 39 are bringing 900 a month, or you just take 39 times at 90.
And I'll just say this: when we did the Riverfest, I remember Angela Winbush and the driver took her around, and she said our area reminded her of Catalina Island, and that she would be back to our area. And so did the other gentleman that performed. It was his first time coming here, had been to South Bend, but never to this region. And he's been back several times to our area, exposed to it, and they love this place, just like we do. So I think it's, you know, just another opportunity for our community to expand and to grow.
And things are moving. A perfect example, Clement Construction came here several years ago as a part of the Michigan Health and Human Services program to do part of that lead replacement program of fixtures in homes and so forth. And they've been doing that for the last 2.5 to 3 years. They got to know this community intimately, going to practically just house to house to house. And they're still doing some of that work, but they've now decided to invest in this community, and they bought like 7 buildings downtown. And I think they came here and did a presentation of the things that they have in mind to do. They have the wherewithal and the money and the knowledge to do it, and they're in the process right now of doing it.
Madam Chair, I'm glad that the city manager brought up gentrification, because this is a classic act of gentrification. Same thing happened in Philadelphia, same thing happened in Harlem, same thing happening in Chicago, and look at Detroit, Washington, D.C., all of these communities. The mayor named so many of them the other night, they had my head swimming. Ecorse, Muskegon Heights. So all of these community gentrification is being practiced. Ben Harbor, I've seen the pattern. So when I hear someone say, "Well, Whirlpool did this and Whirlpool did that," we jumped through hoops to make that campus happen. They promised us this, and this, and this, and this. Only thing that I saw came out of that was a parking lot across the street from the main parking lot. They promised us a lot of things that was going to happen. Same thing with Harbor Shores. They promised us a lot of things that were going to happen. We've been over backwards. We created a tax increment for Whirlpool. We created it. We gave them our brownfield and turned it over to the Barron County. We did all of this that has hurt our community ourselves.
If I might, Madam Chairman, we need to move
Well,
on. Yeah.
I'm glad you let me say that so people can hear me say that Whirlpool has not been our friend. They've been greedy and takers. And if you look at the Whirlpool, how we gave to them and what they've given back, as soon as we said income tax, they put $55,000 in to stop us from doing the income tax. Then they moved their people. And they told the ones that they were laying off in other places, Ohio, Tennessee, Florida, to come to Ben Harbor and spend your money. Start your businesses. That's what they told us, and that's part of gentrification. We're in the middle of it, and Ben Harbor can set a new path to learn how to stop doing, how we can stop them from doing it. We have to do it for the next generation to come up because it's not going to stop unless we stop it. We have to resist it.
If we could move on to the next.
I have a quick comment. Quick comment. Through the chair, has there been a look at the impact on public services that it's going to take to facilitate there, meaning police, fire, public works, snow removal, all those things? I mean, for this amount of time, the drain that would put on the city and our finances and our resources is something to consider. That's an awful amount of time for our public works, public services, to be servicing this domain without some type of coin coming back.
Continuation to some of the earlier discussions that we've dealt with regarding the Joint Sewage Board. You may recall the step we went through just before this was extending the joint agreement between them. You recall that we were asked to, and both City of Ben Harbor and City of St. Joe were asked to extend the agreement because it had ended at 50 years. The Joint Sewage Board is preparing for the point down the road where they're going to have to do some major capital improvements that's going to require bond financing. And in preparation for that, the attorneys detected that the working agreement that had been functioning for years had expired some years ago, but we were still continuing to work together. And we did pass the extension, as did St. Joe. This is the next step, and that is a resolution to approve issue sewage disposal system revenue bonds, and there's a requirement that there be, I think it's 45 days or something like that, public notice beforehand where people get to give input or whatever on it. The Joint Sewage Board is not at this point prepared to issue bonds or even define exactly the amount, but this indicates notice that they could do up to $20 million in order to do the various improvements and so forth that need to be done. So that's basically what this is. It doesn't, at this point in time, commit you to paying anything, but it does give notice that they're going to be coming, asking to be able to do revenue bonds in the future. When that occurs, the financial impact is going to be to everybody in this entire area that uses the joint sewage plant. As you know, while it's jointly owned by the city of Benton Harbor and the city of St. Joe, all of the other township, Benton Township, St. Joe Township, Lincoln Township, all of this area are part of a consortium that also brings sewage to the joint sewage plant. And everybody pays an amount each month based on the total gallons that come through the system going to the sewage plant. Again, please. Damn. I'm trying to, I'm trying to think of the amount by the gallons, and I don't know what that is. The amount that we pay runs somewhere in the neighborhood of around, I believe it's between $30,000 and $40,000 a month, depending on the total flow that goes in. It would be expected to change for everybody, but the number of users are seen. It would, but it would not be like a huge percentage or anything, because the total number of people involved between this whole community all the way down to Lincoln Township, everybody would be paying more. And it would just be the amount necessary to make the payments on the bonds. And at the time they make the determination of what amount of bonds they're going to issue, they'll also supply that information in terms of what the anticipated effect would be in terms of. I do, and also Steve Archibald. Yes. And we monitor and watch, very closely what's going on and so forth. And they they run a very professional operation. Yeah,
Sorry, repeat that.
I said they run a very professional operation. As a matter of fact, last year we hired a new director, and we got an excellent one who really keeps everything in front of the board. We know what's going on.
I sit here as a commissioner and remember the past. At one time, and I'd say it was maybe 8 years ago, could be 10 years ago, the city had a report from this water plant, wastewater. And at that time, there was a surplus of money. And they said that they were going to keep the surplus money for any any emergency or anything that's going on. And over the years, I've been looking for that money. Where did it go? Did it come out of their general fund? Um, I never did find it. That's red flags for me. But I also know that we're part ownership of it. And I do believe when I look at the AP list, that 20,000 is a little bit more, because sometimes we have to pay for different things with that for operations. The other thing I'm asking about is a bond. Usually when we get a bond, we get stuck with a big expense. And they're not being very transparent in this document as to what, they're just leaving it so broad open that we might get a bond, we might get grants, we might get this, we might get that. But with, with the first statement I made, with there's a surplus money, they've got a lot of extra money for this plant, it is operational, everyone does do their job, and capitalistic, they run that facility well. And that money is out there. And I'm afraid that if they ask for a bond for this amount of money, which they might not, they might get grants, they might whatever, but this document is very broad and vague. And it needs to be corrected before it goes to the commission. Otherwise, you know what I'm gonna vote.
There's really nothing to correct. What this document is what the law requires, and that's all they're doing, no more and no less. What you're saying without really recognizing it is that, as a matter of fact, very few of these facilities that don't have long-term bonds already issued. This one doesn't have any. And as you said, they have had a surplus and maintained it for a long period of time. But as you know, with any kind of operation, government or private, eventually the costs and whatnot rise to a point where they catch up with you and your surplus is no longer a surplus. It's just like City of Benton Harbor. I remember when the water plant put considerable additional money in the general fund to help run the city instead of the other way around. But that changed. This doesn't commit you to, the only thing it commits you to is that in the future, they'll come back to you and request to issue bonds. And at that time, you'll have numbers, the years, the interest, and all of that, none of which they know at this point.
Thank you.
Well, I concur with Commissioner Henry, and it's vague. It don't have a lot of explanation. Also, city manager could not even tell us what it would increase to or how much it is now. And from my understanding and my experience, sewer and water cannot be increased at a percentage higher than what is being used by the residents. So, thank you.
Flow rate and not, he mentioned, he did talk about the flow rates and stuff, the cost per gallon. So he talked about the flow rate, but not in depth. But I do think we need some specifics as to how much before anything is done. Because if we're paying 30,000 now a month,
And that's based on the number of gallons that go
That's
through the
based-
system
yeah.
going to there. Now, some of that may change slightly as a result of the township running
more.
there, because remember, for many years, we've handled not only the city's sewage, but also the townships. And in turn, they paid part of that.
I'm just,
Once again, I have to mention, as I said, this is an enabling piece of documentation. It doesn't commit you to one dime of anything. In order for that to happen, they have to come back at a later date after this period is over and tell you how much they're borrowing, what they're borrowing it for, what the anticipated interest rate's going to be, and what the impact is going to be on all of its customers. And then you get to approve or disapprove.
I think you kind of sort of just answered some of the questions that I was going to raise. And it's just pretty much disclosing the fact that they're going to be possibly asking for a bond amount to up to 20 million. And then it's a joint venture, so depending on how much the city of Benton Harbor uses, they'll be responsible for a certain amount.
That's
And then once that's determined, then you'll know how much the increase would be in regards to payment. Is
right.
that what?
And for example, we're paying $1.10 per gallon that's treated, and the bond issue goes through, and when it gets a portion among all the users, maybe instead of $1.10 a gallon, we may be paying $1.14 in order to cover what's in that bond. But that, all that information will be available at the time that they determine how much they're going to borrow, what they're borrowing it for, what the interest rate is going to be, and even how long the bond issue would last. And if the city of Benton Harbor were doing a bond issue, we go through the exact same process, and we put this document
Separately
exactly
instead of
similar
jointly, it's
to
pretty much.
this out first.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. The next item on the agenda is the fiscal review of the budget. This is what it is.
Essentially, what you have before you is a budget in which municipal budgets are complicated to begin with, and ours is even more so, because as you start to look through it, when you look, for example, and we wanted to make sure we put as much information in here, all of the information, so that it's understood. When you look at page 3 and you look down the bottom, that's $74,168,439. That's basically the grant money that the city has received and processed through to do lead line improvements, to do the other utility replacement and street repair and so forth that has gone on, work that's being done in the water plant itself and so forth. So besides that approximate 100 million that the mayor mentions, this has also been coming through the city. Very bottom on the left column. You got page 3? Looks like. Separate that from the rest of what, because the budget has to include, and that's what people are asking, that we include everything. And so we put it in there, which can be different. I mean, the city is nowhere near that large. At the top of this page, revenue projected $9,903,902. Expenses $11,143,684. We're getting to part of that overage that we're talking about that's there. And when you look at you see the deficit there, 1,239,781. And you go through major roads, what we get, revenue approximately 1,082,588. Expenses projected here at 1,069,788, leaving approximately 12,800 that would be anticipated to be there. CDBG is in at 482,000 projected revenue, 482,000 expense, and that is a combination of carryover funds that are still there and the 382,000 that we just got allocated for the coming year. And as you know, we never spend all of the money within the same year that it comes. That's why they have that every May 2nd, you go through that test where we're supposed to have spent 80% of all money available to us. Now, that's what it looks like now. Remember, 3 years ago, that was $2 million. Yeah,
Mr. Little, I have a question
sure.
regarding the general fund.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's a couple of just call outs and you can kind of speak to them, but
Sure.
we talked about a little bit about the broadband, how it's going to run under Lake Michigan. I just wanted to know if that's something that could be completed in that year to help with revenue. We talked about downtown parking. Do we have that break even point? Would that help? And then what about small business development? Like I know on Main Street, I've seen something that says marijuana outlet. I don't think it's open yet, but I'm thinking it'll be open. Then we've talked about that cigar bar. And I know there's other growth projections. I'm just wondering, is that also considered? And then, we've also talked about this over the year about how like a resident can't buy one lot. We're looking to put lots together for development. Has that been any, is there any success in doing that? If so, could zoning be looked at to help that? And then just one more final thing is, I'm not understanding the whole like tickets the police give out. So like if the police give a speeding ticket, I believe they're saying we don't get any money from that. Is there a way to change that to help with this?
Okay, now you're going to have to help me because you got a lot of
Oh, it's a
questions there. I'll start with the last one first. The speeding tickets are written under state law, so they have to go to the court system in St. Joe. And the way that works, the courts take a significant amount of what gets paid from the tickets written under state law. Some of it goes to state. We get a reasonably minimal portion. Yes, we do get something, but it's low. And that's the case for most of the infractions that go to the court system. One of the things that we're in the process of doing right now is reevaluating and rewriting some of these. As you recall, the discussion that Sarah had with you some time ago about so many of our infractions previously were misdemeanors that also all went to the court system and also had a negative impact long term on the records of people. And we changed a lot of those to civil infractions so they don't have to go over to the court. And to the extent that people want to take advantage of it, many of those, they can come to our payment window down here and pay it, and the city keeps the whole amount. And we're going through and revising, and that's part of just the many things that we've been tackling and trying to do in this last period to improve the city's financial situation. So the parking tickets and all of these kinds of things we're setting up so that if people want to, within that first period of time, it's different for whichever ones they are, come in and pay the city. They pay just the amount that the ticket is for, and it's taken care of. There are no further implications. If they don't, then that ticket gets rewritten to where they've got to go to court, and then the penalties start to roll up and everything else on it. So that's the answer on that part. I want to go back to the first question you asked. So PFN is not that project that they're bringing across the lake is not going to generate a lot of revenue for us, but we are going to get some other benefits that are valuable to us out of the deal. We're still working on that right now. And there were some other pieces to it that you what you
I just wanted to know about like small business growth projections. Is that going to help in any way? And is that figured into your proposed revenue?
very modestly, because we expect that there's going to be continual growth of small businesses. It's hard to project exactly how much, but we know there's going to be some all over, some of which is going to be generated right in the downtown area in association with this social district and these special redevelopment licenses and so forth. There are two businesses right now that are on the front with that, but I'm sure there are going to be a number of others.
And then the final piece was, I just thought about how the vacant lots, how, you know, how you were saying, I don't know, sometime in the last year or two, how you're wanting to sell them multiple lots together
Yeah.
so that we can increase development. Has there been any uptick in that? Has that been any benefit?
We're still working on getting all the pieces put together, and now have just about got everything in place that we need to start putting that project, that program out here. Couple of the pieces you mentioned about the zoning, we're just wrapping up the zoning right now. We just got the final draft of the rezoning that's been in the process now for months. And it's going to, I think there's a 60-day comment period on it. It's going to come to you all to officially receive it. Then 60 days for people to comment before we do a final act on it. What it does incorporate changes in it to help facilitate better alignment and so forth. It also incorporates, you may recall, the study that University of Michigan did for us that follows a lot of the practices that we use in South Bend and a number of other communities to try and get that done. And another piece of it that we're working is the like the pattern homes. I don't know if you recall, because I know it's been so much stuff. Pattern homes is where you get pre-approved single family plans for single family, for duplex, for quads and so forth, if people want to come in and buy that. When you normally buy a home, you have plans done. If you have an architect do them, that's a cost, and then you got to present them before the planning commission and go through the process. That's a cost and whatnot. The pattern home type process pre-approves these patterns where a person can come in and say, all right, I want to build a home. I'm looking at this pattern for a duplex or a quad. I want to buy that package. They buy the package. All of that other time and expense, they don't even have to deal with because it's already been done on those particular ones. Then all we got to do is match them up with where do they want it to be. And if we've got enough lots that we can make them available and say, you want here, you want here, we can put this together. Now, one other piece I'm working on right now, and I want everybody to keep in mind, the reason this stuff is taking so long, a lot of this writing and stuff I'm doing myself in between meetings and whatever and so forth. One of the things right now that I'm working on, I have been studying closely for the last 2 or 3 years, this whole tax foreclosure process. And have just put a letter together to go to the county about it, because what's happening when they put this foreclosure list together, they provide it to us. We get a first right of refusal to buy properties on that list that are within the city. But they're costly for us, and we know we got limited dollars. So we have to pick and choose carefully what's really significant. Like, for example, if we didn't have one of the properties surrounding Bobo Brazil, and we know we have a big plan for that, and it was on that list, then I would go ahead and buy that property to make sure it didn't get away from us. But once we buy the ones that we can. An auction is set up. The people who bid in the first auction have to also pay the taxes due, but then they compete with each other on how much more than that they pay. Once that's finished, though, and here's where the problem comes in, then they go to a second auction where properties have often sold for $50, $100, or whatever. There are no commitments to do anything with them, and a lot of people get them and set on them, don't even pay their taxes for the next 3 years, and they wind up in the next foreclosure process. But in the process of that taking place, your city water bills get wiped out if there's a balance. If we've been cutting grass, digging trash off of it, and paying for it for the last 3 years, and we got a lien on there for that, it gets wiped out. All of our liens and stuff disappear. Then they turn around while they're selling the property to somebody for 50 or $100, and nothing's happening with it. They charge back to the city the taxes that they advanced you when they did your tax distribution. So the city loses all the way around. I'm asking them to stop that second auction altogether, turn those properties over to us, and we'll deal. And that's a key piece to this because it will allow us to assemble a significant number of parcels that would enable us to be able to build larger homes on them. See, a lot of the people wanting homes don't just want a home that'll fit on the small lots that we have. Remember, Benton Harbor's history in terms of it was residential, and many of those lots 25 foot wide and 75 foot long, and that kind. You can't get much of a house on there, and that's why so many people go out in the township where they can get a ranch style house and a 2-car garage. That won't fit on one of these lots, but if you put a couple of them together, they can. So anyway, going on from there, the next page, go to page 4, and you'll see at the top the projections of revenue. It starts with the first column showing the actual revenue collected as of the end of the prior fiscal year that ended June 30th, 24. It shows you what was collected in each category. Property taxes was $2,075,016. Income taxes, $1,639,283. And that makes one of the points that I've been trying to say to people about the income tax. We're fortunate to have it. And at the time it was presented and approved, it was needed, and the purpose for which it was indicated for infrastructure was on target. We've had the good fortune, when you look back over that 74 million we were talking about, we have done in the last 24 to 30 months in infrastructure what would have taken 40 years to do from just income tax. So that same urgency is not there, even though we need to continue upkeep and doing stuff over time. Licenses and permits, 609,841. Grants, 5,828, 544. That's revenue sharing, 2,596,213. Pilots, $501,412. So even though they're not huge, there is some positive impact from these pilots. Charge for services, 1,000,001. Franchise fees, 44. Rental income, equipment rental, um, donations, all of it coming up to 15,434.96. The original budget for for the 24-25 fiscal year is 10,328,955, and the proposed budget for 25-26 9,903,902. And down at the bottom, you can see what the expenses and operating expenditures were for the period ending 6/30/2024. The expenditures, 16,385,437, and ended with a negative 954,941. We spent more than what the income in that period. 24-25, the original budget was 10,328,000. The total operating expenditures 10,285,824, and that was your 43,131 balance that was projected in that particular budget. But as I mentioned before, just to not leave that without something being said, recall that we talked about all of the big expenses that showed up that were not budgeted. For example, again, the insurance went from 500,000, half a million, up to over $700,000. Likewise, the legal expenses, the firm we have defending the suit on the water situation, a huge amount of money, and continues to be so, and is not budgeted. Uh, and the same is going to occur in this coming year. We don't even know exactly how much we budgeted and expected around $650,000, and it could be more than that.
City manager, I just have one question. I was just looking at that and your public safety and your public safety and your general administration is two of the largest largest expenses for this particular budget. Is that overtime and stuff factored into those costs? Because they're nearly $8 million of,
On public safety,
what are, time costs associated with those departments? How are we decreasing, not necessarily salaries, but probably some of the costs that's running up the budget here?
we're working closely with them to keep an eye on exactly how we're operating and what we're using overtime for. Some of the vacancies that we feel recently we did in order to lower overtime by having enough staff to cover the shifts and so forth. But in the public safety area, it's a very difficult thing to control. You just have to continue trying to. But you never know when fires are going to pop up and people get called out on overtime and that kind of thing, or police-related type incidents, weather emergencies, and all of these kind of things. But we're going to try and do the best that we can to control it, because the one thing that you should notice here is that in the public safety area, the total budget exceeds the total amount you get in income taxes and property taxes combined for the most part. And you're trying to operate everything else off of what's left. But in our circumstances, that's the hand that we have right now to deal with.
Another, because I know we have some salaried employees. How? Never mind. Ms. Warren has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is on the top on revenue. I know that with the current administration, grants are tough, but do we foresee the grants going down that significant? So it looks like our actual as of 6/30/24 was like almost 6 million, and now we're proposing only 336,000. So that's a huge drop. So is there really not any grants available for the next fiscal period?
We and the people we meet and talk to across the state and the country every day all have that same question, and we just don't know. The CDBG grant is decreasing every year. The discussions going on in Washington that are hitting the news and getting to the different associations that we're involved in is that the stuff that's going on and the discussions with it all talk about cutting as much as they can cut to finance big tax cuts for billionaires. And we just don't know.
Because if we could get, that 1.2 million shortage, if we can get that, we'd be in better shape.
Yes.
All right, I saw a hand just come so that people can hear the question that's being asked in the budget.
I'm looking at the operating expenditures and the income tax administration. What exactly is that? And it looks like you had an original budget of $186,770, and you have 181,000 again for proposed. But it
What,
looks
what
like,
page are you on?
oh, I'm sorry, I'm page 4 still. But yeah, but it looks like the actual was 1,438,000. Why was the increase? Why was it so much based upon what the budget was, and why are you? I mean, why is the budget only 181,000 again when the actual was over 1,438,000? What exactly is the income tax administration?
Actually, that's the cost associated with operating the whole income tax program, which includes a couple of subcontracts with firms that handle the software and so forth. And I believe that larger amount that was there in the prior fiscal year, in large part had to do with paying off some obligations that were still there as a part of it being set up originally. Because I got some invoices myself that come in for me to review and sign off on. And I didn't know what they were, and so I wouldn't sign off until I asked the same questions, and that's how I began to realize that there were those contracts and so forth that were a part of this thing when it was all set up that do different things for us. Like there's a contract in the software system that processes when people send in their deductions and that kind of thing. Because remember, you only got one person here doing some part of it. So a lot of that stuff is done outside. And that's what that was now. For this coming period, that's been done now, and we don't expect to have to carry that much of it.
So you're saying they were previous contracts when you set up the actual income tax funding.
Yes.
So have those contracts expired? Are they expired for
I think,
sure, or are
I don't think they've expired. I think the setup part of them have been paid.
Oh,
and
so
that's
the-
right.
the
So now
1.3 was to pretty much for the setup?
would have been set up, the purchase of them and that type of thing, yes.
Thank you.
I got one more question, City Manager, about I guess under operating expenditures, not public safety, but with just general administration. Are we continuing to add employees? Just curious.
Only in a very minor extent. For example, I'm hiring 6 seasonal workers to help cut the grass. I expect them for cutting the grass to cost us far, far less $176,000 we spent last year. So we are in that extent, to the extent, but beyond that, not many more.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Little, the question of the night. Okay, so I had a lot of questions when we first began about me thinking of ways to increase revenue. What do you think we can do?
Every source of revenue that we have to determine which ones we can influence one way or the other. The service fees and charges, many of them which are out of date. And as an example, again, I mentioned the $10 payments for parking that we were writing $5 tickets for and wondering why nobody was paying for parking, because it's cheaper to just pay the ticket. But same thing with some other areas. We have this $50 reconnect charge for when the water's shut off. Doesn't begin to pay the cost because you send a crew out there to turn it off, typically during normal work hours. But most of the time when it's turned back on, folks are in a hurry for it. They're being called out nights, weekends, and that type of thing. Sometimes they got to go twice and that. And as I said the other night, that $50 fee, and I believe the commissioner had asked the question, what was revenue we got from it? It came to about $50,000. But I can assure you that the cost for that service was probably well over $200,000, which means that we lost $150,000. All right, that's the kind of thing we've got to make adjustments, just as was the case for the trash disposal. As I said, when I first started looking at that at the beginning of 2024, the disposal fee was $50 a ton. By the time the year ended, it was $70 a ton plus a surcharge. And we're continuing to pay that out of the same $17.65 that we were charging back in 2017. But we've now adjusted that. But we've got to go through all of the things that we're doing and make the appropriate adjustments to at least have these things pay for themselves.
So with the, just real quick to roll back, with the water, then just make it standard practice that we only do turn-ons Monday through Friday. Because I don't think taxing and increasing certain things, if somebody's poor and have gotten their water turned off for non-payment, it's still going to be a stretch for them, to pay more money. So just make it a standard practice to only do shut-ons or shut-offs Monday through Friday. After that, then to keep those fees down, to not have to pass them on to customers, we only do it Monday through Friday.
And perhaps the answer to that would be to offer an option. If they want to wait and do it Monday to Friday, then we just charge a lower fee. But if they want it done, and most people, water brings on an urgent situation when it's turned off. They want it on right now type of thing, and that's what's always been the case with us. Same thing when you get a sewer stop up. They don't want to wait until Monday. They want a truck out there tonight or tomorrow or whatever. And those are the things that we've got to look at. I'm sure if we said we won't do it anytime except Monday to Friday, two things would happen. One, some people would go ahead and start paying more attention to paying that bill. And secondly, you'd have a deluge of people come down here going at you all, the elected officials, about it as if it's your fault because they want it now. They want it the weekend. They've got babies. They've got people needing with medical problems and so forth. It wouldn't stand up. But what would be if you did offer two alternatives, a lower cost to do it during the week and the regular real cost if you do it on the other side. And that's worth looking at.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to do a roundup, so I'm rounding up the numbers. So proposed budget, we're getting in 10 million. Expenses, 11 million. Out of that, I'm rounding up public safety at 4. So you divide the 4 into 11, I get 44%. It's going for public safety department. I've seen it in times before, 64%, 57%. We're at 44, we're going the right direction. But you wonder where the money is and why we are the way we are right now in this community. 44% of the operating budget is public safety. This is why we have what we have. And we need to look at that number. We're going in the right direction. I've seen it up there at 64%. All right? 44%. That's half.
Okay. And I ask that I get short, simple, direct, please. First thing I wanted to know, okay, page 2. It said finance director, September 1, hire with Plant Moran, transition for 4 months. Do that mean we are gonna get a finance director in September?
That the application was sent out. I mean, oh my gosh, the it was posted, and so we've gotten applications in for that role. So the hope is, because we have fees associated with that, will help with this budget as well. So yes, we have some applications for a new finance director that we should be reviewing soon.
And then also, if we hire one, where it looked like we would be hiring one in September, transition for 3 months, Plant Moran, does that mean we'll be paying them for 4 months? Why are we?
That is correct. And
Okay.
I don't, and if we're getting somebody that knows the stuff, why do we need 4 months of?
You minimally need 4 months. If you get somebody that does not have heavy municipal hands-on experience, then you're going to need longer than that. Here's the thing about this finance director situation, just like the city manager. When you have a city that's down to, I mean, in this building right now, me included and Rhonda included, you got 13 people. Very few cities even have a department that has 13 people. They have a lot more. We, Rhonda and Alex, have to work pen and pencil and computer and whatnot all day, every day, doing the work. We're not just managing the work, we're doing the work. And when I say that, most city managers, most finance directors, they don't do this grunt work. They sit in their chair and tell the other people what to do. And if you get somebody like that, you got a problem, because somebody got to do the work. And you don't have those kind of people. You don't have that depth of staff. A lot of times when I come up with great ideas to help the city, I can get all the help I want, as long as I look at the end of my arm.
Okay, so I got an issue with this too, because city manager keeps saying he doing the work and all that. I mean, he's getting paid to do the work. That's your job, just like my job. I'm getting paid to do it.
Correction, I'm not getting paid to do the work. As a
You
matter
are
of-
getting-
No, I am not.
You better get a
As
call,
a matter
'cause
of fact, I'm
he been
still making the
disrespectful.
exact same salary now.
If you show out tonight,
that
I'm
I
show all the
got
way out.
when
Point
I
that
started
control
as
your
a-
chair.
as-
You better get
as
a
an
control
assistant
chair,
director.
because he already been disrespected with Commissioner Henry. I'm not buying it. We gonna show
Commissioner,
out tonight.
Commissioner, we don't have to
Well,
do
he
that.
need to calm down and he don't interrupt me.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
But I also hear what he's saying. He's saying for the amount of work
Yeah,
that
that's
he's
what
doing.
he's saying. He get over $100-some
He's saying-
thousand.
But that's what he's essentially saying. Because
So-
in other places, the finance directors make a lot
Yeah,
more
but
money than what they
I'll
make
tell
here.
you.
So that's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
We ain't doing that smart addict stuff. Also, I see he's asking, I guess for a wage increase for $25,000. Am I looking at this right?
That's correct.
But we trying to
And
save money?
11%, I think he asking for an 11% increase.
11% increase and $25,000. But we trying to save
That's correct.
money.
Somebody saying something?
Oh, I got heard something over there. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so I don't know. Can you explain why it's that, or can he explain why? I guess he just want more money. I mean, explain why it just increased 11% and the 25,000. The 25,000 when you make already that much money, and we trying to save money and help the city, right?
So I would say that explanation hopefully is had with the personnel and finance director.
Okay.
Personnel and finance chair. That's Commissioner, can you elaborate on that question?
Oh, okay. You asked him.
You don't have, okay. Okay. But there is an increase, and I think it has to be voted on anyway. So, but there is an
Yeah, it
increase
does, but
associated.
And if I might, if you look at the budget, you had 191,000 budget at the end of 6/30/24. The budget being projected here is 176,500, still considerably less.
okay. I also see this the second year that everybody getting an increase except for our little stipend. We only get 2 stipends every twice a month if we at the meeting. What, $110? This is the second time that we're not included. Everybody getting an increase except for us again. You know, I know I work hard besides meeting and all that with a lot of my own money. I pay more than that gas and the events that I do. So why are we not included again in an increase? Just for the,
The commission, we can revisit.
okay. Also, the expense, page 2, expense assumption, it say travel for commissioner, $1,250. Now, that's just the, per diem, or it's, because I know that's not training included in there too.
I'm not sure. Is that city manager, is that for that, mayor and commission budget? I know we used to have just a basic budget. I think it was 15,000 or 20,000 at one point. So has that budget been increased? And does that include that in that budget? Because I'm not, what page is that on?
Page 2.
No, I'm talking about the bottom. It says 2.
Mhm.
I think I would divide it into different.
Yeah, it's got, I think it was 2, I wrote down 2, yeah. Yeah, at the bottom, close to the bottom, well, under expense assumption, yeah, that's why I said expense assumption.
I think it's just a matter of us, is that our total budget, or is that just a part of our budget? That's a good question. Just per commissioner, $1,000, I mean, 1,250,
Just for the travel though.
just for travel.
Okay, also on page 9, it says, $3,000 for commissioner and mayor, I think it was, let me see, page 9. So, is that including training, or what is the 3,000? Where did I see that? It was page 9, I believe. It wasn't 9. I wrote it down, it's 3,000. Did I write 9? Ah, that's page 9. But, Mr. Letter did the budget, didn't he? So he'll know. It was something in there, 3,000, and it was for, I think it's a mayor and commissioner. So I wanna know, is that the train included, or what's the 3,000?
I see, so I'm looking at operating expenditures on page 4, and it has the total budget for the commission is 60,000. So
Not that one.
actual was 60, the budget amount was 67 last year, so this year was approved, up to another $1,000, I think, or $300. It's 65 plus 61 on page item for our expenditures is just broken down. That's probably, you probably saw it on one of those other pages.
Was it 14? Okay, I know I've seen it. I wrote down the wrong page. Well, I'll come back to that another time, cause it was something I seen 3,000, but I'll go to my next question. We'll get back to it. If not today, I'll get back to it. Um, okay, so the travel and training where we were talking about, well, for the travel, $1,250. And then I saw somewhere, I can't recall, I thought I had for 3,000. Anyway, I know that our budget was overdrawing. And one of the reasons was due to the mayor, it said additional travel expenses to connect with, countries' leaders. So how did that get overdrawing? Because that, I thought it was supposed to not be, if we set a fee, isn't it a set fee and not a law for additional? So who do I ask for that?
It should be, all of our budgets should be shared, and I think that's what my question was last night, like, why are we going over what we've budgeted for specific items, and if we do that, it probably should come out of our own pockets,
I would think so.
even though it's city business.
In essence, what was taking place there, and you didn't go over your total budget, you just went over the budget in that category. And that in part resulted from a lot of the activities and so forth that were going on in Washington that affected us. In fact, they're still going on, except we've kind of gone through the phase of trying to meet with people that we thought could impact it and make a difference and that type of thing.
Okay, also, now I see where it says, city assessor, right? Do we have a city assessor? Who is it? Because I thought Angela was gone. Oh, okay, somebody said she was gone. Okay, well, that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
The city assessor, and is she in here in the building, or she works from away from the building?
She comes in, do different functions.
Okay. But we can meet with her if we needed to set up an appointment. Okay, thank you.
And she still meets with the board of review and helps them set up everything and all of the legal requirements that we have, she takes care of them.
Good evening. I know a lot of times I'll be looked at cross-eyed, but a finance director should be in when anything that is discussed about your finance. That person has a record and can answer almost any question. That's why it's so questionable that we've never got a person that's really overseeing what comes in and what goes out. And that's a finance director, not a financial institution, because they're only going to take what you give them. Finance director is here on point to make sure that they get whatever's coming in and whatever's going out. And it doesn't make me any difference at what you feel about me, but I'm going to say it like it is. We need a forensic investigation here because there's been years that we haven't had a finance director in here to sit here and monitor the money that's coming in and going out of Benton Harbor. It's a lot of money going in and out of here. It's true, there's some things that's being done. But the thing is that it's a whole lot of gap in a lot of the things that's going on. And we just need someone that we can go to and can explain every area of what is happening, especially with your finance, because that's what it takes for us to be accurate in running a city, is that we have our finger on the dollars. And so it's too many gaps, it's too many coming back and going into different things like for the infrastructure. That tax dollar was supposed to have been for that. And now they're asking to go into general fund a second time in just 1 year, in less than 3 months. So, yes, it's questionable, and I think that we need to have a finance director in here. We'd save a lot more by having things in place that should be there. And so we're talking about we don't have much money. We're never gonna have enough money because we don't have the things in place like it should be.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any more comments in regards to the budget or any more questions? I think we're going to do city manager another hearing next Wednesday to make any amendments to this particular one.
You'll see the budget amendments prior to or that day, and then any other questions on the draft budget can be brought up that day as well.
Thank you. All right, for the three items, because we didn't make any motions to move them forward to the full commission, the next meeting will be next Wednesday. Whose committee is that?
We're actually going to flip-flop personnel and finance and public safety, if that's okay with the chair over there, so that personnel and finance can meet a week early.
That sounds great. Is there any more questions before we move forward? Yes, yep, because we need to.
Just one question, is the budget available online?
It will be.
Okay, thank you.
It will be. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to have a lot of dialogue about today, and hopefully some questions will be answered. And if there was some amendments, as was stated in terms of the commission's budget, now city manager can do that. And I'll just say this, our city does underpay its staff, all of them. And so, yeah, for the work that is done, and I do agree, most most offices have multiple people doing the work and somebody telling them what to do, not always doing it or participating. And in terms of the budget, the budget is the city manager's. He has to sign off on everything that was approved, not approved, what's in those accounts. So the city manager, this is his budget. So whether we had a finance director or not, it's the city manager's budget. The buck stops there still. And so she can have the numbers right, he sign off, if something's wrong, at the end of the day, that budget is the city manager's. So the responsibility still falls with the city manager.
You guys have been through the budget and all of that. I'd like to get some kind of an idea. If I asked some time ago about reparations, or a package for reparations here in the city of Ben Harbor, and I think that was back in December. I would like to have some kind of information that you guys, or showing that you guys are interested or involved in trying to get that. And I know it's a long process, and I know we have to all be for it and about it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Second, I'm hoping it happens, though. Let me be optimistic about it. For parking meters downtown, I asked questions about that. I heard that it was going to be done, going to start being done, and I'd like to have some kind of update on that. If it's how much territory will that cover, and that's all my questions.
one more question. I'd like to ask one more question, and it's been even brought to my attention. The last time that we took money from the city income tax, $450,000, I would like to have an itemized of where each one of those dollars went. That's what the finance director does, is have that. So I'd like to have that available in our next meeting. Thank you.